The laughter came first. Not loud, not cruel at first, just enough to sting. It spread like a ripple across the polished glass lobby, bouncing off marble floors and expensive suits, until it became something heavier, something humiliating. A single father stood at the center of it all, gripping the small hand of his daughter as if she were the only solid thing left in the room. He didn't look like a bodyguard. He didn't look like a fighter. And to them, that was enough to dismiss him. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and people rising above judgment, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stories like this deserve to be seen and maybe, just maybe, remind us who we really are. His name was Daniel Reeves, though no one there cared enough to ask. His shirt was simple, sleeves rolled up neatly, not to show strength, but because it was the only decent one he owned. His shoes were worn but clean. And beside him stood his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, clutching a soft, faded stuffed rabbit like it held the world together. He hadn't planned to bring her. Life had simply left him no choice. The babysitter had canceled. Again. His savings were gone. Rent was due in 3 days. And the opportunity in front of him, the CEO's personal bodyguard position, was the kind of job that didn't come twice. It wasn't just a job, it was survival. But the moment he stepped into that building, he knew what they saw. Not strength, not discipline, just a tired man with a child. The candidates around him were everything he wasn't. Massive men with sculpted bodies, tattoos that told stories of violence, and confident smirks that screamed experience. They sized him up in seconds and dismissed him just as quickly. Some whispered, some openly laughed. One even shook his head as if Daniel had wandered into the wrong building by mistake. Lily felt it too. She pressed closer to him, her small fingers tightening around his. Daniel knelt slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, steadying himself more than her. He had promised her things would get better, promised her they wouldn't always be counting coins at night or skipping meals so she could eat. He couldn't fail here. The receptionist eventually called his name, though her tone suggested she didn't expect much. As he stepped forward, the room quieted just enough to watch what they assumed would be quick entertainment. The testing area was wide and open, with padded flooring and a few instructors observing from the edges. At the center stood Marcus Hale, the current head bodyguard. He was known for his strength, his speed, and the fact that no one had ever beaten him in a test. He looked at Daniel the way a lion looks at something too small to bother hunting. Daniel handed Lily a small snack from his bag and asked her to sit near the wall. She nodded, trying to be brave, her wide eyes taking everything in. The test wasn't explained much. It didn't need to be. It was simple. Last as long as you could against Marcus. One by one the candidates went, and one by one they failed. Some lasted a few seconds, a few managed a minute. None left Marcus even slightly challenged. His movements were precise, efficient, controlled. He wasn't just strong, he was trained. When Daniel's turn came, the room leaned in, ready for the shortest match yet. He stepped onto the mat slowly, his expression calm, not confident, not scared. Just present. Marcus cracked his neck slightly, clearly unimpressed. The signal was given. And then everything changed. Marcus moved first, fast and aggressive, aiming to end it quickly like he had with the others. But Daniel didn't react the way the others had. He didn't panic, he didn't charge. He stepped aside. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was enough. Marcus adjusted, surprised. He attacked again, harder this time. And again Daniel moved, not with brute force, but with precision, like someone who understood movement, not just strength. The room grew quiet. Seconds stretched longer than expected. Then a minute passed. Marcus's expression shifted. This was no longer entertainment. Daniel wasn't fighting to win. He was surviving, calculating, waiting, and then it happened. Marcus lunged, overcommitting just slightly, something he hadn't done all day. And Daniel saw it. In that single moment, everything changed. His body moved with sudden, explosive precision, a shift, a turn, a controlled redirection of force. Marcus hit the mat, hard. The sound echoed across the room like a crack of thunder. Silence followed. Heavy, stunned silence. The strongest man in the room had just been dropped in seconds. No one laughed now. Daniel didn't celebrate. He didn't even look around. He simply stepped back, breathing steadily, his focus already shifting toward Lily. She had stood up, eyes wide, her face lighting up with something he hadn't seen in a long time: pride, the instructors whispered among themselves. The CEO, who had been watching quietly from the upper level, leaned forward for the first time. Daniel helped Marcus up, offering a hand without arrogance. Marcus took it, still processing what had just happened. Respect had replaced dismissal. But Daniel's battle wasn't over. The head evaluator stepped forward, asking questions not about the move, but about his past, his experience, his training. Daniel's answers were simple, almost understated. Years ago, before life had unraveled, he had trained in defensive combat, not for competition, for protection, for discipline. But when his wife passed away suddenly, everything changed. He left that world behind to raise Lily. Work became survival. Skills became irrelevant. Until today, the evaluator pressed harder. Why now? Why this job? Daniel didn't speak about money or desperation. He spoke about stability. About wanting his daughter to feel safe. About needing a chance to rebuild something that had fallen apart. There was no performance in his words, just truth. And sometimes truth carries more weight than strength. The CEO finally descended from the balcony, walking slowly across the room. The energy shifted instantly. This wasn't just a decision anymore. It was a moment. He stopped in front of Daniel, studying him, not as a fighter, but as a man. Then he looked at Lily. She stood quietly, holding her rabbit, her eyes full of hope that felt too big for her small frame. Something in that moment softened the room. The CEO asked one final question, not about skill, not about combat, what mattered most to him. Daniel didn't hesitate. His daughter. It wasn't the answer of a bodyguard. It was the answer of a father, and somehow that mattered more. The decision wasn't announced immediately. The room held its breath. Some of the other candidates shifted uncomfortably, realizing they had misjudged the man they had laughed at. Finally, the CEO nodded. Daniel had the job. Not because he was the strongest, but because he was something rarer. He was steady under pressure, disciplined without ego, and driven by something stronger than ambition. He was driven by love. The room didn't applaud loudly. It wasn't that kind of place. But the silence this time wasn't mocking, it was respectful. Daniel walked back to Lily, kneeling down as she wrapped her arms around him tightly. For the first time in a long time, his shoulders relaxed. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were stepping into something better. As they left the building, the same people who had laughed avoided his eyes. Not out of shame, but because they had learned something uncomfortable. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it walks in quietly, holding a child's hand. And when the world finally tests it, it doesn't just stand, it rises. Before this story ends, take a moment and comment the word "I respect" if you believe people should never be judged by appearances. Your voice matters more than you think. Daniel's life didn't change overnight, but it changed enough to bring stability, enough to bring dignity, enough to let Lily sleep without hearing her father worry in the next room. And sometimes that's what victory looks like. Not applause, not recognition, just peace. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away silently. Like, share, and subscribe so more people can hear stories that remind us of the strength hidden in ordinary people. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs more understanding. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you see someone who doesn't look the part, you'll remember this moment and choose kindness instead. The first night in the new apartment felt unreal. It wasn't big, it wasn't luxurious, but it was theirs. Daniel stood by the window, staring out at the quiet city lights while Lily slept on the small bed behind him, still clutching her stuffed rabbit. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and possibility. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy, it felt earned. But peace, he had learned, was never permanent. It had to be protected. And that was now his job. The next morning, Daniel arrived earlier than required. Old habits, discipline, and a quiet fear of losing everything again drove him forward. The building looked different now. Not intimidating, not distant. It was where he belonged, at least for now. But belonging had to be proven. The security team didn't greet him warmly. Respect had replaced mockery, but not acceptance. That would take time. Men like Marcus watched him carefully, not with arrogance anymore, but with curiosity. They had seen what he could do. Now they wanted to understand it. Daniel didn't try to impress anyone. He didn't boast. He didn't revisit the moment he had dropped Marcus. He simply worked. Every movement was precise, every observation intentional. He studied entrances, exits, blind spots, human behavior. He listened more than he spoke. And slowly, without demanding it, he began to earn something far more valuable than attention: trust. The CEO, Mr. Laurent, was not an easy man to protect. He was powerful, unpredictable, and often careless with his own safety. He moved fast, made decisions without warning, and refused to live like a man who needed protection. That made Daniel's job harder, but also clearer. This wasn't about control. It was about anticipation. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel adapted. 1. He learned Mr. Laurent's patterns, his instincts, even his moods. He learned when to step forward and when to stay invisible. And in doing so, he became something rare, a bodyguard who wasn't just present, but aware. At home, life was changing too. Lily laughed more. She ate without hesitation. She slept without fear. The weight she had carried silently and bravely was slowly lifting. Daniel noticed it in the small things: the way she hummed while drawing, the way she asked about school again, the way she hugged him a little tighter each night. But with change came new challenges. One evening, after a long shift, Daniel received a call from Lily's school. It wasn't urgent, but it wasn't good either. She had gotten into a fight. That word hit him harder than anything he had faced at work. The next morning, he sat across from her in the principal's office. Lily avoided his eyes, her small hands twisting nervously. The story came out slowly. Some kids had been talking about her clothes, about her past, about how her dad had looked poor before. They laughed, just like the men in that lobby had laughed. And Lily didn't stay quiet. Daniel didn't feel anger, not at her. He felt something deeper, recognition. After they left, they walked home together in silence. Then Daniel knelt down in front of her, just like he had that day at the tryout. He didn't lecture her. He didn't scold her. He told her something simple. That strength isn't about hurting others. It's about knowing when you don't have to. Lily listened, really listened. And in that moment, Daniel realized something important. He wasn't just rebuilding his life. He was shaping hers. Weeks later, the real test came. It wasn't announced. It wasn't expected. It just happened. Mr. Laurent was attending a high-profile event, a crowded gathering filled with powerful people, flashing cameras, and hidden risks. Daniel had reviewed the security plans twice. Everything looked controlled. But control is an illusion. In the middle of the event, something felt off. Daniel couldn't explain it immediately. It wasn't a visible threat. It was a shift in energy, a movement that didn't belong, a pattern that broke. His instincts sharpened. Across the room, a man moved slightly against the flow of the crowd. Subtle, intentional, focused. Daniel's body reacted before his mind fully caught up. He moved, not fast enough to draw attention, but fast enough to intercept. The moment stretched. The man reached inside his jacket, and Daniel was there. What followed wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was controlled, precise, efficient. Daniel neutralized the threat before most people even realized something had happened. Security rushed in seconds later, but it was already over. The danger had been real, and it had been stopped. Mr. Laurent looked at Daniel differently after that, not as an employee, but as someone who had just saved his life. Back at the office, the atmosphere shifted again. This time, it wasn't quiet respect. It was recognition. Marcus approached Daniel later that day. No smirk, no ego, just honesty. He admitted what everyone now knew. Daniel wasn't just capable. He was exceptional, but Daniel didn't carry that moment home with him. At home, he was still just a father. That night, Lily showed him a drawing she had made at school. It was simple, colorful, imperfect. It showed a man standing tall, holding a little girl's hand. Above them, she had written something in uneven letters. "Am I hero?" Daniel stared at it longer than he expected to, because for all the strength he had shown, all the battles he had faced, that was the moment that broke him. Not in weakness, but in something deeper: gratitude. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt, still nights where Daniel lay awake, thinking about everything that could go wrong. But the difference now was simple. He wasn't alone, and he wasn't fighting just to survive anymore. He was fighting to protect something worth living for. Time passed, and with it, Daniel's place in the world became clearer, not defined by how he looked. Not limited by where he came from, but shaped by what he chose to do when it mattered most. Because in the end, the world didn't remember the laughter. It remembered the moment everything changed, the moment a man who was underestimated stepped forward and prove that strength isn't about size, it's about purpose. Before this story closes, take a second to comment the word a strength if you believe real power comes from resilience, love, and never giving up, no matter how the world sees you. Daniel never sought recognition, but he earned something greater, a life rebuilt, a daughter who believed in him. And a quiet truth that stayed with him every day, that sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones who look the part. They're the ones who refuse to break even when the world expects them to. If this journey moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe so more people can hear stories that remind us what real strength looks like, because someone out there might need this reminder today, and maybe that someone is closer than you think.